Good afternoon. I'm Peter Sparanese, City Manager for the City of Abbotsford. I'm with Mayor Henry Braun, who will be providing you with an update on the state of emergency, evacuation orders, return home plan, as well as some information regarding repairs, recovery works that have been completed to date. I ask that you hold all your questions until he has completed his remarks, and staff will be on hand with microphones as we would like to capture your questions as part of the overall briefing. Please ensure you speak loudly into the mic. Thank you, and over to our Mayor, Henry Braun. Thanks.
Thank you, Peter, and good afternoon. I'd like to start by acknowledging that we are located on the traditional territories of the Tsemeth, Matsqui, and Lakamo First Peoples. I'm Henry Braun, the Mayor of Abbotsford, and with me today is our City Manager, Peter Sparanese. Over the last 27 days, the City of Abbotsford has been focused on dealing with the devastating impacts of the Nooksack River floodwaters, 3 atmospheric rivers, and record-breaking rain, breaches along the Sumas Dike, and unimaginable losses. Residents of Sumas Prairie were evacuated from their homes and farms, some for the better part of a month. Today, I'm pleased to announce that I am lifting the final portion of the evacuation order for Sumas Prairie, Old Lake Bottom, with the exception of a few homes north of the Sumas River, as access is prevented at this time. We are speaking with these homeowners directly about their individual scenarios and plans for re-entry. The Old Lake Bottom is the red area on our return home map. As with the other areas of the Sumas Prairie that had their evacuation orders lifted over the past week, the Old Lake Bottom area remains on evacuation alert at this time. While evacuation orders are lifted, we continue to work in a number of areas as we repair roads and bridges and remove sediment buildup in Claiborne Creek and historic Claiborne Village. While there is still work taking place, we ask people to respect road closures in place to ensure their safety. Additionally, yesterday we were able to remove the do not drink advisory for water service on Sumas Prairie. However, a boil water advisory still remains in place as we flush out the system. We also have 2 drinking water stations open daily at number 2 Road and Boundary, and at Vi and Whatcom Roads. Residents in need of drinking water are encouraged to use these filling stations and take whatever you need. We have now almost fully completed all inspections and assessments of roads, culverts, and bridges, and rapid damage assessments of structures. With all of this important work complete, we are taking this 4th and final step in implementing our return home plan today. Although the lifting of the evacuation order is great news, we know that this doesn't mean that all residents will be able to go back into their homes. Many of the structures in Sumas Prairie were affected by the floods, with many sustaining significant damage, and that the road to truly returning home will be long for many residents. Our new wastewater transfer station is fully open and running at 1225 Riverside Road, and property owners from flood-affected areas can take debris and mixed waste to the transfer station for disposal. Our return home website includes specific and essential information for evacuees, which will help guide them their return to their properties, and our home center at TradeX will remain open 7 days a week to help people connect with the resources and supports that they need. And as I mentioned before, Samaritan's Purse, a nonprofit organization, is in Abbotsford to help residents with the practical assistance of cleaning up their home, removing damaged items. They currently have 6 teams and around 60 volunteers out helping people clean up their homes, and with the lifting of this order, they will ramp that up to meet the demand. While today we share good news for many in our city, we aren't fully out of the woods yet. Weather forecasts anticipate 40 to 60 millimeters of rain for today and tomorrow, and more significantly, 60 kilometer per hour winds. While those wind speeds aren't unusual, when the ground is supersaturated like it is, they can easily become problematic with trees going over. City operations staff and the Emergency Ops Center will be monitoring the weather and the situation on the ground through the weekend to make sure we can all get through this weather event safely. For me personally, this last month has been surreal and unbelievably challenging. But I do believe the worst days are behind us. Though we continue to monitor and assess the situation daily, I am encouraged that we are now in the final step of our return home plan, and I am optimistic that from this point on, it will be 2 steps forward with no further steps back. With that being said, I want to take a moment to thank everyone across our city, province, and country for their kind remarks and encouragement throughout the disastrous flood event that fell upon our city on November 14. But while today we reached an important milestone, we still have a long road ahead of us. I want our community to know I promise to continue to advocate for you and our community to senior levels of government. My greatest fear is that 3 or 4 months from now, when the media stories have stopped and the next emergency captures the country's attention, that the devastation to our community is forgotten. On a per hectare or acre basis, Abbotsford is the #1 ag-producing jurisdiction in all of Canada, approaching $1 billion in sales per year according to the 2016 census. Roughly 50% of dairy, chickens, turkeys, and eggs that are consumed in BC come from Abbotsford, in addition to many other very important products like blueberries, raspberries, strawberries, and a whole host of cold crops. Today, I met with the BC Minister of Agriculture, Food and Fisheries, Lana Popham, and the Federal Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food, Maria Claude Bibeau, to discuss the significant impact the flooding event had on the agricultural industry and support required to support these working in this area. If we value our food security and want to protect our food sources, we need to rethink infrastructure investments and prevent a greater disaster that may be just around the corner. For Abbotsford, this means upgrading the 17 kilometers of Sumas Dike and upgrading the Barrowtown pump station to current standards as soon as possible. In addition, the Matsqui Dike protecting the Matsqui Prairie, that's our other prairie, also needs to be rebuilt before the next freshet. The existing disaster with Sumas Prairie will pale in comparison if the Matsqui Dikes breach. The Fraser River is a much larger and much more powerful river than the Nooksack River and will wreak havoc on our economy and infrastructure. The BC Chamber of Commerce estimates that the economic impact of a Fraser River flood event on Matsqui Prairie will be approximately $30 billion. The City of Abbotsford, as a local government that receives only approximately 10 cents of every tax dollar, simply cannot fund $1 billion to rebuild both dikes to today's standards. To put that in perspective, $1 billion is more than 6 times our yearly property tax requisition, half of which goes towards fire and police, and the other half is for all of the other services our residents expect us to provide, such as water, sewer, roads, parks, and recreational facilities. It is simply impossible to collect an additional $1 billion to upgrade the dikes. According to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and the Union of British Columbia Municipalities, 60% of infrastructure across Canada resides in urban areas. Yet, as I said earlier, the property tax funding regime for local governments that was set up over 100 years ago only provides us with 10 cents of every tax dollar collected by all levels of government. This system was never designed with the idea that local government would be faced with contemplating this level of infrastructure upgrade. For 7 years as mayor, I have advocated for a change in the fiscal relationship between cities and the federal and provincial governments, and I am not alone in this. The BC Urban Mayors Caucus, where I am one of 13 mayors that represent approximately 55% of the population of British Columbia, has been advocating for just such a change in cooperation with the Union of BC Municipalities. This group meets on Fridays, and I want to give a huge shout out to the 12 mayors who have encouraged me and brought some of their resources to help us over the past 4 weeks, and specifically to the City of Vancouver for the tremendous work of Canada Task Force 1 and the City of Chilliwack for their staff and volunteers who came to assist. Without this help, Abbotsford would have had a more difficult journey than it already was. However, in order to bring the collective weight of senior levels of government to bear on the challenges we face as cities, provinces, and a country, we need all political parties to put aside their political differences and reach across the aisle and address the monumental issues that are before us as cities, provinces, and as a country. I believe the majority of Canadians are waiting for just that kind of leadership. Let us join hands and provide it in the days, weeks, and years ahead. Otherwise, I don't know. Now that we are pivoting from the flood response to our recovery plan, it is time for me to bow out of the near daily press briefings and return to the many other aspects of policy work and governing alongside my fellow council members. As the recovery work continues, we will continue to post updates on our website and social media channels. As I close, I want to thank all 1,300 staff, police, fire, and each and every department for their efforts and sacrifices that you made during a very trying time. And I see many of them are actually up here. I wasn't expecting that, so thank you. And a special thank you to Peter Sparanese, our city manager, who navigated us through some tough waters. I really have come to appreciate his cool, calm, orderly, and disciplined efforts without much sleep. Thank you, Peter. And thank you, Council, for your support in and day out. We have our differences, but we are a team looking out for the best interests of the city as a whole, and for that I am very grateful. To my wife, Velma, who has been with me every step of the way, thank you for your unconditional love and support. As a man of faith in God, I know without a shadow of a doubt that it was our faith that kept both of us going day to day. Each day, media shared what happened to our city and why, and helped us to keep our community informed. Thank you. You will never know how much I appreciated you over the last 27 days. And last but not least, to the community of Abbotsford and our countless supporters, thank you. We saw neighbors helping neighbors, local nonprofits and businesses jumping into action, volunteers helping to save Barrowtown Pump Station and provide emergency support services, countless people filling sandbags, farmers taking in cattle and other livestock from neighboring farms and giving them a home, and an endless amount of donations of food, time, and resources. The list goes on, and I'm sure I'll learn many more acts of kindness in the weeks and months ahead. While the flood events of the last month devastated Sumas Prairie and impacted our entire city, they also revealed the true heart and resilience of our community. We pulled together in a time of great need, and together we are getting through this. This is my final scheduled update for this flooding event. However, we will be continuing to provide information via our YouTube channel and other communication channels going forward. I will now take any questions. Yes, if you could speak into the mic, please. Thank you.
Hi, Mayor Braun. You mentioned that this last month has felt pretty surreal. Can you talk a little bit more about what it felt like today to lift that final evacuation order?
Well, it was actually quite emotional for me because I know that there are people who've been out of their homes for a month. I've talked to some of them, and they've told me that they're not sure that they can rebuild it. The standing water of 6 to 8 feet in some of those houses, it smells. There's already mold growing. So my heart goes out to all of these people who they have uncertain futures. Some are going to be fine. Others are going to need lots of help. And I said to both ministers today, our farmers need your support more than ever before. So, and I'm glad to have lifted the order. I think our staff and the contractors and everybody else that came from other jurisdictions, what they have accomplished in 27 days is, I think, miraculous. So I'm relieved this part's over. The hard part, though, is coming. The next 2 years, we've got 2 years of recovery in front of us. This isn't going away anytime soon, but that's a different kind of work. Anyways, thank you for the question.
And what does it mean to have the federal agriculture minister here today? She was touring some of one particular chicken farm, which the media saw her touring. What does that mean to have federal ministers here coming to see the damage?
Well, it's huge, and my impression was that she was taken aback at what she saw. I don't think she could take it all in, actually, but that's a question for her. But I just left her half an hour ago, and thanked her for being here, and that we're going to need their help. And she assured me that the federal government is here to help. So, and not just here, other jurisdictions too. Thank you. Anyone else?
Can you give us an update on the status of those particular critical dikes in Abbotsford, particularly the Matsqui, and how long have you known, how long has the city, province known they need to be replaced?
Well, it goes back to after the 1990 flood in Sumas, the Nooksack, when it overtopped and came to visit us. There was a standing committee, or a committee that was stood up. The U.S. government, the federal, our Canadian government. Over a period of 6 or 7 years, they put a report together of the situation on the ground and what needed to be done. I don't know where that report is, but they haven't been meeting since the report was issued, I think, in 1997 or 8. I have suggested to both ministers that committee needs to stand up again and fix this. I have lots of people who are calling me and emailing me from Everson and Washington State, Sumas, the city of Sumas, our neighbors, asking if I'll come there and help them. And I said to the minister that I think it would be improper for me to be sticking my nose into, because that's an international issue between two countries, and that's above my pay grade. But there's a lot of people that want to fix the Nooksack as well. And of course, we've done our own studies. And the latest one was in December of 2020, just about a year ago, or exactly a year ago, I think. And we said this is what we need to do. It's I think in those days it was $400 million just for the Sumas dike. With COVID and everything else, prices increasing, I'm sure that's $500,000 or $500 million. And the Fraser is actually, I'm more afraid of the Fraser dike or the Matsqui dike breaking on the Fraser. The last flood we had there was 1948, and it was a mess. We've had lots of erosion arcs on that river for the last decade, and the province has provided funds over the last decade, but those are Band-Aids. The river continues to silt, or deposit silt that's coming through from Hope, 70,000 cubic meters a year, I think. The river level keeps rising. Our dikes aren't being raised. This isn't rocket science. Eventually, if there's a confluence of what we had here, record rainfall, heavy snow melt, warm temperatures, that dike's going to break. I'm not the only one that has said this. George Ferguson, who's passed away 4 years ago now, when I became the mayor, he sat me down. He says, those dikes need help. I said, George, I will do everything in my power to do that.
Obviously seeing the flooding event now, precursor maybe, wake-up call, what would you call that, what we saw now, to a potential Fraser River situation with that Matsqui dike? And what do you need from the province immediately going forward?
Well, we need the province and the federal government. The province can't do this by themselves either. This, $1 billion, and we're not the only ones that have issues. I mean, when I look at the Coquihalla and Merritt, and I mean, there's other jurisdictions, Princeton, they need help too. But collectively as a country, this is when we come together and we fix things. And our infrastructure is not where it ought to be. I don't think there's many Canadians that would dispute that. And the older cities in particular, that's why you hear the infrastructure is falling apart. We have to address this, or we're going to have this experience every year or two. That's my concern. The Nooksack flooded last year. It didn't breach, but if they don't fix the Nooksack, we can't take that water from the U.S. from the Nooksack. What scares me on the Nooksack is, and I've been reading all these reports over the last week, going back, is an avulsion, which is there's some engineers that say if we don't fix this, the Nooksack's going to take a hard right turn somewhere around Everson and carve a new channel into Sumas Prairie. And then 100% of the water will be in our valley. Now that would be a doomsday scenario. It would wipe out the Vetter dikes, it would wipe out Barrowtown. that lake would be full of water, Highway 1 would be cut off, and probably wipe out 2 500 kVW transmission lines that run through the valley too, Trans Mountain pipeline, and lots of other infrastructure. We can't, these dikes, these 2 dikes need to be must not fail dikes, and we have to do everything to make sure that doesn't happen, or these farmers who are going to reinvest hundreds of millions of dollars could see the same thing next year. That would be a tragedy. Anyone else? Appears not. Thank you very much. You won't be seeing me so much anymore.